I think this Ukrainian conflict has been another defining moment for us. You know, really the world changed dramatically a few weeks ago, and suddenly the phone started ringing off the hook, literally.
From the Defense and Aerospace Report, this is The Downlink, a podcast about the intersection of space, the space business, and defense. Not just what's over the horizon, but what's happening above it. I'm your host, Laura Winter. Hello again, Downlink listeners. What's not likely a surprise to you is that sanctions really annoyed Dmitry Rogozin. He's the head of Russia's state-owned space corporation, Roscosmos. And since Russia started its war in Ukraine, foreign governments and commercial customers have abided by the sanctions. That means canceled launch contracts and no new ones. Rogozin told a Chinese broadcaster this week that because he doesn't see future cooperation with Europe as viable, he's got 10 rockets without payloads. Outside of Russia, this new reality is just beginning to be fully understood. This week at the annual Satellite Space Industry Show here in Washington, D.C., the buzzword was resiliency. The concern is, what will Russia and perhaps even its allies do next? A number of business leaders that work with the Department of Defense told me that they expected a lot more investment of time, money, and effort into hardening space assets. Now, while Roscosmos is hunting for customers, there's anecdotal evidence that outside of Russia, some in the commercial space industry are seeing a yet-to-be-quantified bump in sales related to Russia's war in Ukraine. This week, we'll hear from Hans Steiner, the CTO of Atos, and Eias, Daka, the company's director of global sales. This European company provides satellite signal integrity monitoring services. Essentially, if your SATCOM signal is running into interference, they'll know it and where it's coming from. But before we get to that conversation with Hans and Eias, at the show, I checked in with Matt Desch, Iridium's CEO, to get his take on the space industry's mood and how Russia's war has affected Iridium's business. Hi, Matt. It's really lovely to see you in person and to actually meet you here at Satellite 2022.
It's amazing. You look smaller than you do. No, I don't have no idea what. Without being on a Zoom screen, this is really great to see you actually in person as well. Thanks.
You've been talking to lots of different business leaders here at Satellite, and I'm wondering, what's the mood now that Russia has invaded Ukraine, and it does kind of change things up. I mean, there have been some space companies that have suffered some cyber attacks. What are people talking about at this show?
Well, I think it was just a few weeks ago that none of us could believe that this was going to really happen. There were a lot of people who were skeptical that a European country would be attacked, and so I don't think any of us really prepared greatly for it in some ways. Always preparing on the cybersecurity side because, frankly, I don't think this is anything new. The last 10 years, I think we all have been, certainly we have been investing a lot in technology to protect ourselves, but this is a new game and a lot of new threats. I think people are trying to figure out how we can help, how we can make it end. I think communications, pictures of what's going on, all those have become very important tools. I think satellite has maybe been recognized for sort of its important role to be played, whether it's in high-resolution pictures, which we don't do, but we do supply satellite phones and push-to-talk devices and broadband units and those sort of things, and the demand has been really extraordinary over the last few weeks. We've always been a company that's been relied upon in emergency situations, whether they be hurricanes or tornadoes or tsunamis like in Japan. All those have been sort of defining moments for us. I think this Ukrainian conflict has been another defining moment for us. Really the world changed dramatically a few weeks ago, and suddenly the phone started ringing off the hook, literally. We've had emails, we've had requests, we've had, and usually Iridium is really utilized very heavily in the first couple days of anything because we're so mobile and we're so able to be brought in quickly. And then, VSAT systems and others are sort of rolled in, and our role declines back to more what it was for the heavy mobility uses in, say, the country that's having a hurricane or disaster. This has not been that way at all. Demand and traffic has remained very high in Ukraine. It's only getting higher, I think, recently. Really sort of an insatiable demand for satellite devices, particularly as additional terrestrial infrastructure is destroyed or damaged or not utilized. It just shows how important mobility really is. People need to be on the move, and they need, unexpectedly on the move, and they need to connect with their loved ones, with other governmental agencies, with other important things to help them through the crisis. Clearly, all our hearts go out to the people who have been affected by this. The pictures are horrific. The situation is dire for most of them, and we're just proud we can do something to help.
What concerns, as the CEO of a company that has such a tight relationship with the Department of Defense in going forward? There are cyber attacks that, we have three-lettered agencies both here in the United States as well as counterparts in France looking into that are looking specifically at space companies. I mean, what kind of concerns do you have going forward and in the future?
Well, when I joined Iridium 15 years ago, I don't think space was viewed as strategically as it is today. We had GPS, and people were nervous about the fragility of sort of position and navigation and time information from GPS, but communication systems were big systems in geostationary that would operate or not operate, and it was not as important because I just don't think they were as pervasive as they are today. Now we're being utilized for so many more things, and I think we've become part of I think space is being viewed as part of the sort of warfaring domain, if you will. And you can see with the anti-satellite tests that some countries have gone through, which is abhorrent to those of us who are operating networks in low Earth orbit. It's clear that some people think that maybe perhaps damaging assets in space or of operators on the ground or taking control of them might be valuable in some sort of conflict, and that's disturbing for those of us who run networks. So we've obviously worked very hard to protect ourselves. I'm not sure that, like I said, that there's anything new about the last couple weeks because we've assumed that we have such an important network. It's very resilient, fortunately. It's nice having lots of low Earth orbiting satellites because, you can't easily damage our network. That's one of the reasons why we're relied upon by so many. But it's concerning, and it should be concerning to anyone who is operating a network in space right now.
And how does Iridium face what is really a new security era? And what I mean by that is that, we have a situation where China is being asked by Russia to support it militarily, beyond, meals ready to eat, et cetera, et cetera. There has been a phone call between the U.S. president and his counterpart in China. Does any of this affect your business or possibly affect your business in the future if things do come to pass where we may have to have sanctions on China?
Well, I hope not. We don't have any manufacturing operations in China or any specific ties to China that would sort of be affected by sanctions. We do have customers in China, certainly a lot of Internet of Things customers for tracking assets, and some voice calls and some push-to-talk networks and those sort of things are in China. Not in that big a way, but a sizable enough way, and so certainly some of those possibly could be affected. But I think overall, it always affects an operator like us. We're the only still company that has 100% of the Earth's coverage, so we're still a very, very global operator. We blanket the Earth in communications. When some part of the Earth is making it more difficult for people to communicate, it sort of affects the overall global approach and brand that we have as a company. So I don't really like to see that. I like to say, like any other operator, we'd love to be we'd love to be neutral on these kind of things and provide a business, but it's very difficult when you see people being hurt, by one country to the other. It's hard not to sort of take a side to the people who are being attacked. So we'll obviously, as a U.S. company, will comply with whatever U.S. regulations and sanctions are required. Just hope it doesn't come to that.
I was also told, and we're going to sort of switch tack here, I've also been told that unlike other companies who are going bigger, Iridium is going smaller. Why don't you tell me something about that?
Yeah, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? A lot of the excitement in space right now is investing in mega constellations of low Earth orbiting satellite systems, which we would call ourselves, but they're being designed to really do something very different than what Iridium is doing. Specifically, when I say they're going bigger, they want to supply as fast a speed as possible, an internet-like quality service like you'd get at home. And that's a very important service, and it's an exciting one. Certainly the one that's talked about the most is the Starlink system from SpaceX. But they, like OneWeb, like Telesat, like Project Kuiper, like a number of other networks, are being designed to supply big bandwidth pipes. Think of them like if you were trying to deliver packages, and maybe the most efficient way to get the most packages between two cities is an 18-wheel truck, right? However, if you want to deliver that to your neighborhood and your door, taking that 18-wheel trailer all over the city isn't the most efficient way to do that. You have step vans or couriers or people on bikes. That's kind of what we do. I mean, we specialize in fact, the way we think about it is what's the most amount of data or connectivity we could get to the smallest possible device, something that can be extremely portable, extremely mobile, extremely inobtrusive, and maybe even part of your smartphone or part of a device that's worn on your body, maybe even in a watch or certainly in something like a drone or a autonomous vehicle of some sort, maybe a recreational vehicle. These are all small applications. So when we say we're going small, it's how do we boil down essential connectivity, essential connections anywhere on the planet to things that every one of us touches and uses and is part of. So unlike Starlink, for example, it seems like a fantastic system, but it's really delivering 18-wheeler type information to people. And the smallest it can really get boiled down to is still the size of a large pizza, which needs a plug and a cord and can't be moved around too easily, can't be sewn into your military uniform, can't be attached to your backpack, can't be something that you carry with you in your pocket, really. Some people dream and think that's possible, but that's not the way that system is designed, and it can't be adapted to do that without incredible inefficiencies. So we do very different activities. They go big and go big very, very well, and we go small and do that really, really well. And it's one of the reasons why we've been so successful over the last 18, 20 years is because we do something very different than others, something very highly specialized, highly targeted, and we do it well with so many other partners who take us and put us into so many products. So that's how we're going small.
And lastly, this is really the first conference that I've been at for over 2 years where I haven't worn a mask, where I've been able to sit across from a table with a CEO and actually interview him or her. How do you view this year's get together?
Well, I'm sure I don't look as good without a mask as I did with one. No, it feels normal. It's funny how I think everyone feels the same. As soon as you take the mask off, as soon as you get back to people, it sort of surprises you how natural it feels. Because after 2 years, I think we thought the world had changed completely, and we would all be just talking to each other over computer lines from our basements. And by the way, it's great. We've learned how to do that, and that's a great way to fall back. And I think we're going to do a fair amount of that going forward. But I don't think anything, competes really with face-to-face communications with people, with sitting down, collaborating, brainstorming, talking about this, running into people. I can't tell you how many people I've just run into that I would not interact with unless I saw them in a big group of people, and have made some connections already here at something like this that are extremely valuable because they supplied a piece of data, information about what a competitor or what a partner is doing, created a new business opportunity, a chance to get together again for coffee in a week and talk about something specific. You just don't do that over Zoom. Everything on Zoom is planned, it's organized, it's highly scripted, and frankly, not very healthy in terms of long-term innovation and expectations of a growing, exciting industry like space and satellites and communication. So it's great. Let's keep the masks off. Please get vaccinated. Let's not have any more variants. Let's stay out there and try to keep this going as long as we can.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Laura. Really good talking to you.
Sometimes there are services that seem to have been made for the moment, like DoorDash in the pandemic. I'm not saying Atos is the next Grubhub, but it is an example of a space business that's seeing its customer base grow because of Russia and that country's electronic warfare capabilities, which, if you're interested, is the subject of an earlier Downlink episode. Here's my conversation with Hans and Eias at the Satellite Show. Thank you for making the time. It's great to have this opportunity to speak with you both in person.
Yes, hello, Laura. Thank you for inviting us.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Laura.
Eias, Hans, let's take a moment to have you introduce yourselves and your company, Atos. Hans, why don't you start?
Yes, my name is Hans Steiner. I'm coming from Vienna, Austria, and my company, as Laura already said, is Atos. Atos is a multinational company headquartered in Paris, about more than 100,000 employees, and we work in a wide field of areas, mainly in the IT services, but also a considerable branch is in the defense area.
Eias, what about you?
Yeah, hi, Laura. So my name is Eias Daka, and I am in charge of global sales for our defense portfolio for satellites, and I am based in Germany.
And who are your customers? Can you name some of them?
Sure. So our customers are in both or in three different areas. One is the commercial operators like Eutelsat, Avanti, Arabsat, Intelsat, and you name them. And the other one is in the defense area that unfortunately I cannot mention them in name. And we also provide the regulators, the telco regulators, with our system to monitor the frequency allocation over satellites.
I'm going to start with a general question before honing in on satellite communication, signal integrity, and identification. It's been just over a week since Russia started its war in Europe's front garden in Ukraine. It was made crystal clear in November with the anti-satellite test that the Kremlin considers space assets fair game for aggressive actions, and we know that those actions include not only kinetic kill weapons, but cyber attacks and electronic warfare. What is the mood among European space operators and your customers, Eias?
So everybody in Europe is concerned with what's going on in Europe, in Eastern Europe, especially the commercial operators for satellites. And to speak of an example, just recently, or in the beginning of the war, one side of the war started a jamming of a satellite from Viasat, and that caused, of course, the whole system to go down, an outage for all the wind farms in the northern side of Germany, which was a big loss for the commercial wind farm operator. So everybody is concerned. Everybody is taking steps in order to protect their satellite communication assets. And I think the war made it very clear that there is a real need for cybersecurity, for satellite communication situational awareness, that we know exactly where satellite signals are coming from, who are generating them, and of course to geolocate them and to know where exactly they are the source of each signal coming from.
Your company provides a suite of services that monitors the links between satellites and ground stations. That's signal interference detection and analysis, and you can locate where it's coming from and from who, friend or foe. Have you seen an uptick in incidents since February 24th? I'm asking this because both Russia and Ukraine use electronic warfare to prevent communications and control. What have you been seeing, Hans?
Yes, in fact, Laura, we have seen an uptake. Respectively, our customers have seen an uptake. In general, we have seen uptakes in the past years due to the fact that there's a lot of communication going on, also crisis more going on. And this increased already the satellite communication. And with the satellite communication increase, you have more and more interferences. But recently, since the war started, in fact, really skyrocketed the interference cases. We see them on our monitor, but we see them also when we talk to or we hear them when we talk to our customer. And the fact is, we are providing these services and solutions to our customer in order really to identify where the interferences come from. First of all, we detect them. We see them in the spectrum, or our system sees them in the spectrum. And then the operator, of course, they need to take countermeasures and to really identify where the interference comes from the ground, because you mentioned, you identify and classify and see what's going on, and then really want to know, we want to take countermeasures and to find out where does it come from.
How hard is it to locate that or say attribute where the interference is coming from and who's doing it?
In the general case, it's pretty hard. So monitoring is quite simple because you get the signal and you do an analysis and you find out that the carrier is not working properly, so that the communication is not working properly. That's the simple part. The more complicated part or even difficult part is then really to find out where it comes from. And here we have in the past years, like in the last 10, 12 years, we have improved our algorithms with various improvements, technologies, to find out a method or several methods. We do not rely on just one method to find out via several methods to really improve the quality of the geolocation. So really be able to pinpoint where the interferer might or will come or is coming from. For instance, we have introduced a solution a couple of years ago which we call ILS-1. ILS stands for Interference Localization System 1. The 1 stands for one satellite, because we only need one satellite in order to identify where the interference comes from. The normal case is the 2-satellite solution, and this one works that you have 2 satellites visible at the same time. And doing this, we can triangulate what we do mathematically, do some correlations, a little bit easy said than done. We do lots of correlations, and then through this we identify 2 lines at the time of difference when 2 signals arrive at a different time, and the other one is when the satellites move, they create a Doppler shift, and we are measuring the difference of the Doppler shifts. And with this together, where the lines cross, we find out where the interferer comes from. Normally, we get a precision of a couple of kilometers, and in the normal case, this would be good enough that you identify where the signal comes from, because it comes normally from a teleport or from an antenna. But if you are in the city, or if there are more antennas down there, you really cannot identify this. For instance, in the defense case, military case, it would be really extremely good that you pinpoint to the, not centimeter, but at least to a couple of 100 meters where the signal and the interferer comes from, or where the signal in general comes from.
And for that, Laura, we are correlating the data with other sources. So for instance, we have a platform where we can get access to images from Earth observation satellites, and we correlate the image with the geolocation result that we get from our system, so we can see the image of the intersection of the both lines that Hans just mentioned, and that increases the the accuracy of the system and gives the operator or the agency which is looking at the results a very good idea where the signal is coming from. And on top of that, also we have developed models, AI models that can help us to classify and to geolocate signals precisely coming from a specific location. That's said very simply. Sometimes our customers are looking into content, so they are correlating also the content which is transmitted over the signals. And this is something that we also offer.
Now, NATO heads of state are attending an extraordinary summit in Brussels this week, and Russia and Ukraine do not have a ceasefire at this time. I'm wondering, Eias, how are sales? Has the interest in your services grown in the past weeks and here at Satellite 2022 at this conference?
I mean, the interest in our satellite communication situation awareness is increasing by the day since the crisis. We could see that here in the show, that everybody is stopping. Oh, situational awareness, what is that? What can you do? How can you help us with the situational awareness? So I think that generally speaking, the awareness for situational awareness is increasing, and a lot of, let's say, Ministry of Defense, departments of defense in Europe are looking seriously to improve their capabilities to monitor the skies and to have the right equipment to be able to monitor neighboring countries. And this is exactly what we do.
Hans, what are your plans for the future for Atos?
Yes, Eias mentioned this situational awareness platform. We are constantly improving this platform, and we are continuing improving it with the midterm, short-term, midterm is improvement of this platform. And then we have started a development where we reverse our algorithms because the important thing is, in order to do geolocation or identification where a signal comes from, we need the precise position of the satellites. This is normally hard to get. Of course, you should know the position of your own satellite if you are an operator of that satellite, but the adjacent satellite is normally not your own satellite. And for instance, in the defense area or in the military communication, you hardly ever have a second satellite. This is, by the way, why we have invented this ILS-1, but I mentioned before. But coming back to the two satellites, so we need the exact positions of these satellites. And of course, there are catalogs, but they are not precise enough. So we are now implementing a method where we ourselves can determine where the satellites are, so exact position and trajectory. So this is on our agenda for the next couple of months. It should be finished by early next year or end of this year. So that's basically what we plan for our system. So extension of the platform, the situational awareness platform, and the precise localization of satellites. So we reverse it. We, instead of identifying where the signal comes from the ground, we identify where the satellites are in the sky. Finally, for next year, we do have, early next year, end of this year, we will have an idea where we intend to track in general where signals come from. So no matter where they are, on maritime or on the ground, that we track the sources of RF signals, no matter where they come from, and intend to offer also a service for tracking RF signals.
Yes, Hans, thank you so much for your time. It was really great having you.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
That's it for this week. For the latest defense news and analysis, listen to the Defense and Aerospace Report's daily podcast hosted by Vago Muradian. And to keep your eye on what's happening in the maritime domain, check out Cavis Ships. You can subscribe to the Downlink podcast on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. I'm Laura Winter, and thank you for listening.